1 week ago, I was in California. And since then, I've gone all the way to California. No, I did not stay here the entire week. That would drive me absolutely insane. If pods literally had nothing to dispatch me on in an entire 8-day period, I would probably quit because I would say, what's going on? But no, they could have done some bad things to me, for me, whatever. But I'm relatively happy with the way things worked out. Let me tell you what's going on. A week ago today, I was accidentally shut down because I had finished, as you know, if you've been watching this channel, I finished my work and I had 10, 12 hours left, something like that. And I was trying to get another job. But when the end of the day happened and I didn't have one, what I was really hoping to do is get dispatched and sent across the country again. But what ended up happening was I sat there the entire next day. And after about the 10 a.m. mark, and this is California time, so it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Actually, it might have even been before that because I got up early. I got up really early because I was expecting to get sent out at any moment. I did not get a pre-assignment the day that I did the last vlog. And so I was hoping that I wouldn't by the following morning. And the reason why is because I'd already been down and I wanted to go ahead and just reset, have complete hours and be ready to go. So at this point, I was kind of saying to myself, let's just reset me since I'm already halfway done. Please don't send me out. Please don't send me out. Please don't send me out. And by about, I guess it was about 1 o'clock on the day after, I was probably about at that point 28 hours into my reset. And so I sent a message saying, hey, I'll be reset, as of tomorrow. So go ahead and pre-assign me so that way I can pick up something first thing in the morning. I didn't get a pre-assignment that day. And I was bummed because I was already at that point paying for 2 days at this lot. So $40. The following day though, I'm sitting there, and this is probably the slowest I've ever jumped up after getting dispatched. Normally I'm like, cool. It's almost like, responding to the bat signal. I see the signal and I'm going for it. But no, in this case, it was new pre-assignment. And I'm like, where am I going to? Because, at this point I can stay in that lot until 3 p.m. without it costing me another day. And I'm really hoping, since I'm fully reset at this point, I'm hoping it's going to be something that sends me on a long haul across the country again. And it says pick up, and it was my Mipitas, something like that. It was outside of San Francisco. It was about 150 miles, something like that, from where I was in Sacramento. About 150 miles. Maybe it's a little more than that. I can't remember. Seems about right though. So anyway, one thing I missed though, and this is me being absolutely honest, I missed the fact that the dispatch was sending me out the following day. It said begin on the next day. I was so excited to get a job that at this point I had already anticipated I was going to be going out someplace, because I was like, I'm reset now. I got full hours. I'm going to go ahead and do my pre-trip, because I had been holding off on doing a pre-trip. Normally, what I'll do if I'm waiting for a job, I'll go ahead and pre-trip. And that way I spend that 15, 20 minutes, however long it's going to take, and I'm ready to go. So that way, as soon as I get the call, I just jump out, double check the integrity of the trailer. I double check that everything is good. The fifth wheel pin, is still locked and everything. And I head out. But I did that. And so as soon as that pre-trip came through, I was kind of like, let's see where I'm going now. At this point, I was like, I just had this weird gut feeling, since I had been told that there was a shortage of freight on this account because people don't really want to move, at this time of year, into the northwest of the country. So being that I was sure they were going to send me up there, and I was like, oh, please don't, please don't, please don't. But I got lucky. Go down and pick up in Nipitas, I think it was, right outside of San Francisco, and then drop off in Salt Lake City, I think. No, it was dropping off in Aurora, Colorado. That's where it was. That's what it was. So I picked up, so I went down to San Francisco, and this is where I screwed up. Because I actually screwed up twice in this vlog. I'll tell you about it. The first one was I got to that location, and I'm supposed to be picking up 3 16-footers. And the loader, he gives me the 2, and then he gives me the paperwork, and I'm like, where's my 3rd? He says, we don't have it. I'm like, you don't have it? He's like, no, we're not supposed to get it. It's not on the paperwork. So I go in to talk to the manager, and the manager is like, yeah, I see this in the system as not being picked up until tomorrow. And I'm like, what do you mean not being picked up until tomorrow? He says, well, we're picking it up from the customer today, but we can't schedule one of you guys to come out here and get it the same day. So, because we don't know when we'll get it. And I was like, well, can you look and see when it's supposed to be arriving? Because normally, they'll pick it up the day before. And then they'll try to get on it pretty quickly. So that way I was like, well, can you check and see when it's going to be picked up? And he looks at the computer and says, oh, we're picking it up right now. Should be about an hour. I'm like, I'll wait. And I looked at my paperwork. Originally, I thought it was picking up same day, but sure as the world, I got my dates wrong. Being involuntarily shut down and having to shut down for 2 days threw off my dates, because I was saying in my mind, I'll be reset as of this date, and I was off. So anyway, I waited. The pod came in. As soon as I threw the straps and got that thing on there, I started heading back up towards Sacramento and then heading out on 80. All right. This is winter, so there's freak storms. All of a sudden, the Interstate 80 is really bad about snow and all kinds of craziness. There was a storm going on in Salt Lake City. And it apparently had, right after I went over the Donner Pass to go into Sacramento, later that night, there was a freak snowstorm, and it was all chain law and everything else. Somebody in one of the Schneider groups online posted a picture, and it was only a few hours after I went through the Donner Pass. It was like later that day, like right as the sun was setting. I'm like, yikes, it's snowing and chain law in full effect. And the chain law was in that entire day I was down. And I kept looking at it saying, I don't want to deal with chains. I don't want to deal with chains. Please don't make me have to deal with chains. I'm not afraid of having to do it. I've looked at enough videos. I've studied it. I even opened I can talk, I promise. I even opened up my chains, looked at them, brought them in here, messed up my floor with the grease and stuff, so I had to clean that up, and looked them over. I know what to do. I know how to get them organized. I'm not afraid of it. I just don't want to have to stop and do it, because anytime that happens, it means everything is going to slow down. You can only go no faster than about 35, 45 miles an hour with chains. I think some people at Schneider said 35. I think the book is textbook. I think people have told me 45. But I would rather there be clear conditions, so that way I can get where I'm going. Either way, I'm a day ahead at this point, because I picked up all my pods the day before. Now, the way I look at this is, even if they said, no, it's not going to be in until the end of the day, and it's going to be after we can load it up, so you're going to have to come back tomorrow. The way I look at it is, I was already paying for parking anyway. If I had to wait another night, I would at least have a better chance of trying to find another place, maybe a rest area or something like that. Because if worst came to worst, I would always have to pay another parking spot. It would be the same thing as if I looked over the load, noticed that I had to pick up the next day, and then stayed there and paid another $20. So this way, I at least knew that I was going to be, there. I at least knew that I had a fighting chance, and I wasn't going to be out any money. And I actually ended up lucking out because they were getting that pod and I hit the road. So as I was leaving Sacramento, as I was leaving the location right outside of San Francisco, it's still the chains, all these different stations along I-80 going up to Arizona. All of the little places were, the snow tire chain symbol, and it said chain law in effect. And I'm like, great. But right as I was leaving the Mipitas area, it had dissipated to only 2 places. But it said, we're doing checks for chains. Now, when I went to Wilmer, Schneider told me, here's your chains. This is what you need. 4 total. When they check for chains, even if they don't want you to use them at all, if they check for chains at all, they want to see 6 or 8, one of the 2. So the way I was looking at it was, if they do a chain check, I'm not going to be able to go through. I'm just going to be turned back around and returned to Sacramento, and I'm going to be, frustrated. But when I stopped and did a load securement check somewhere near Sacramento, I was so happy to see that the chain law had dissipated. And the weather was like in the high 40s, is what it said on my apps. So I was like, please, having dissipated just enough, and the rest of it, just put down all your stuff on the road and make it so that way I can actually get through there. Because once I get to the other side of the Donner, I'll be happy. So I made it through the Donner. It was fine. When I was coming back over from Salt Lake, I had stopped in Fernley at this Pilot or a Flying J, one of the 2, that happened to be at a Terrible's casino. And it was pretty cool. I mean, uneventful. But there happened to be another stop in Fernley's, 2 exits away, so it's like 2 miles. And that was another Flying J that I happened to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Because I saw that there was a Flying J. I was thinking about going on, but I'm like, no, I'm going to stop at this one because I happened to glance at it from the road, and I said, there's a whole lot of parking spaces. So I could have gone on to the next Flying J, the one that I was already familiar with, but I said, I looked over and I happened to see it. And I was like, you know what, there's parking spaces, quickly pull on off. I was already in the right lane, so it's no big deal. There was a lot of parking. I parked there overnight, left early the next day. Now, Arizona was smooth. I'm sorry, not Arizona. Nevada was smooth sailing. But Salt Lake City had that freak storm, so it was supposed to be icy and that kind of stuff. And I was just going through there. But I had to figure out what I wanted to do. So I went ahead and started to head that way. I ended up shutting down just northeast of Salt Lake City, where I was right off of I-80. There's a Sinclair up there, and they only charge $3 for shipping. I'm sorry, not shipping. What am I saying? For parking. So $3 is extremely reasonable. I don't mind a little mom and pop type store. The only thing was, it was a dirt lot, but because of the snowstorm, things had frozen. A lot of it had thawed just a little bit and become mud, and then it had frozen again. So when I jumped out in my non-slip, boots, I was stomping around in that, and when I got back in the truck, now it looks like I spilled chocolate milk all over the floor. It looks terrible in here. I need to get more wet wipes. Well, not wet wipes. I need to get more Lysol wipes. I mean, I guess it's actually starting to kind of lift itself. It's, I guess, getting tracked in. Still, I need to wipe it down. It will drive me crazy if I don't think I have. If I don't actually wipe it down. Anyway, have a friend that lives in Salt Lake City area, so met up with him. I had finished early in the afternoon, so met up with him and hung out with him for a bit. And then the next morning, got up early, and I was looking at the weather. Wyoming has a reputation for shutting down I-80 quite often. If they have a storm, they're like, oh, we're going to go ahead and shut down this section. And they'll say, you got to stop. or you can go the other way. There was areas that were saying that it's 70 plus mile an hour winds. The same thing as when I was coming back the other way, except that I only was carrying one pod before. So it was basically just a flatbed. And it said that 70 plus mile an hour winds, if you have a closed van, then the road is closed to you if you weigh less than 50,000 pounds total. Well, I was carrying 3 pods. So basically it's basically like a closed in van. So I'm going to follow the same rules. I mean, I could be ignorant and say, no, I think I'm not I'm a flatbed. I'm not a closed-in van. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to treat it as if it is, because that's the safety-minded way to do it. If I want to get home and see my family, that's what you got to do. So I looked at it, and there was on their DOT map, there was a big, huge area that was red. There's areas of it that are green. There's areas of it that were yellow, as, you know. But I looked at it and I said, you know what? That's too risky. If I were to go that way, and it even said on the thing that it's going to be that path is going to be closed to trucks, because 70 plus mile an hour winds, it's going to be closed to trucks under 50,000 pounds. And I said, that's too risky, because I don't think it's going to lift. And if I drove through that, I would not be over 50,000 pounds, and that would be way too risky. And I don't want to do that. So I said, this means I need to look at the weather going out of Salt Lake City southeast, going down to I-70, and then cutting over and going through the Vail Pass and that kind of stuff. It was chain law before, and that was the road that there was 2 traffic accidents, including what looked like one in a chain up area. So I was like, don't want to do that. But it had been a couple of days. No chain law was in effect. It didn't look like there was any bad weather. Temperatures were getting down to -3 degrees there at night. But I looked at it and said, well, if I leave at, what was it, 1 a.m.? Something like that. If I left at midnight, 1 a.m., whatever time it happened to be, I would get through there. And as the sun would come up, the temperature was going to be rising. Maybe I left later than that. It might have been closer to 2:30 or 3. Because I remember looking at it saying to myself, I want to time this so that way I'll be going through it in the warmest time. And according to my apps in Vail, the temperature was supposed to be at its peak temperature with no snow or anything like that. So I figured it would be maximum visibility, and they would have already put anything on the road and whatever to melt things by about 10 a.m. So I said, that's about the time I want to try to get through there. So I did. I got through there, and I knew that it was going to be too late. I knew I wasn't going to be able to make, because it was Sunday, I knew I was not going to be able to do my delivery. Because pods are only open, if this is your first time watching, pods are only open Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. till 3 p.m.-ish. But that was a Sunday. So I had to, and this point, because going up and through that pass, it pulls a lot of gas because it's high and then it goes down, and it's slow going up and then down, up and down, up and down. And so my gas started going away quick, my fuel. And so when I got to the Denver, Colorado area, it was about, I was at about my 9.5, 10 hour mark. No, driving. I was about at my 9.5 mark by the time I got to Denver. And I was looking at it saying, I have about an hour and a half left. I need to stop and get fuel. Now, my fuel assignments, I was supposed to be dropping off in Longmont and then going over to Aurora. The problem was, on the estimate of how far you can go based on your miles, if I went to Longmont and then I went to Aurora, that would put me about 20 miles over my estimate on fuel. I had a fuel assignment after Longmont going to Aurora, but I looked at it and I shook my head and said, there's no way in the world I'm going to stall out the truck on the road. I need to get fuel now. And there's not very many fuel stops along the way from Salt Lake City to Denver on the way that I took. There was only like one or two pilots. And I went past them because at that point, when I went through the last one, as soon as you get on 70, that one, at that point, I had like 200 extra miles based on my from my estimate. And at this point, because I knew I would basically be having to let the truck do the work, I put it in cruise control. And instead of stomping on the gas, normally what will happen is I'll watch the speedometer. If it hits 64, I will stomp on the gas. I'll hit the gas to bring it up to 65. It's governed at 65. I want to maintain that 65. So I'll be watching it, and the second that thing hits 64, hit the gas, push it back up to 65, then I'll ease my foot back off. And then if it drops to 64 again, boom, stomp on the gas again. That's usually what I end up doing. But in this case, no. I was just letting cruise control do its work, because going up the hills, you're gonna go down to as low as like 30 miles an hour, sometimes even lower, because you have to be in the right lane. It shoves you over to the right lane, and you're going to be behind other trucks that are very heavy, and they're creeping up the interstate. So that's annoying, but you know what? It is a reality of trucking when you go up and down steep inclines. But to save fuel, I was not stomping on the gas at 64. So even then, though, it chewed through the rest of my fuel. And so I went ahead and went to that Aurora Pilot or Flying J, whatever it is, the one that I stopped at last time and had a hard time getting parking at. And it was the same exact way. I had fueled up, and then I looked and I said, well, geez, there's no parking here. I drove through the lot a couple of times, and I'm like, there's not even anyone that's in their truck sitting in the driver's seat looking like they're about to head out that I could circle around a couple of times, any of that kind of stuff. People were just not moving. It's a Sunday, it's early afternoon, they're not moving. So at this point I said, okay, this isn't going to be it. So I'm not going to find anything here. I search for a drop lot. I find a drop lot on the way to Longmont, which is good. And on the way there, I passed a TA. Well, it was the same story. Trucks were making spaces all over the place, making it very tight with the forward pull-out room, just making it extremely difficult for people because everyone was trying to park there. And I looked at it, shook my head, and said, I don't need to add to this by just making my own space someplace else. So that's when I said, you know what, the drop lot that I had found in Aurora, because when I realized how difficult it was to park in Aurora the previous time, I said, I want to have a backup plan, and I want to have a drop lot. There happens to be one in Colorado, in the Denver area. It's just at the very back of like an intermodal and container lot. It was a little difficult to find. Directions took me there, but it didn't seem like it was accurate. I looked around, didn't see any Schneider trucks. That's because you have to go in there past all their intermodal containers and then keep on going past the trailers for intermodal and then keep going back, turn all the way to the very, very back part of the lot. And then that's where in this little bitty elbow of this back part of the lot, there happens to be a few Schneider trucks. Well, a few trucks with trailers, and then there's a few drop trailers. Either way, I shut down there overnight. Now, because I had met up with my friend the night before in Salt Lake City, that particular lot closes at 9 p.m. So I got back and I went inside and brushed my teeth, but was not able to take a shower or anything. In a drop lot, you're not able to take a shower. So at this point, I'm like, I'm starting to feel yucky, to use a, kid-friendly word. You can tell him my dad. And I tell you, I was like happy to have found a spot before I ran out of time, but also just kind of cursing the whole Colorado thing just because it's just not, it's not good. If I did not have a drop lot, I don't know what I would be able to do. Some of these places, because it's just, they don't give you drop lots and you have no idea where you're going to be parking. That's when people end up pulling up on the side of the road. That's when people end up, doing whatever. So, sorry, I'm looking back there. There's a weird guy just walked by in front of the truck a moment ago. And now he's hovering around the back of my truck back there. There's a dumpster back there, but he's just walking, pacing. So, the next morning, I dropped off in Longmont, Then I drove over to Aurora, and I knew based on the time that it was approaching 10:30 to about 11:30 a.m. It was about approaching 10:30, so it's like 10 a.m. And you know what that means in the world of pods. It means that if you're going to be sent a job, you'll probably come through about 10:30 or 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. So that means it was 8 something a.m. But at the same time, I said, you know what? If there is a fighting chance that I'm not going to be sent something, I'm going to go on to the, because one exit down, there is from Tower Road, which is where the pods locations are. There's 2 of them over there. To one exit down is where the airport road is. And that's where the pilot is. So I said, I'm going to go on over there. It's in the morning. Maybe I'll find a parking spot. There were parking spots. And as soon as I pulled in to the lot, and I'm like, I hear new pre-assignment, I'm like, yeah, I don't even have to pull over and park or anything like that. But as soon as I go the only way, I'm going to just circle around and go back out. There's a guy teaching a guy how to back up. And then there's 2 bobtails. One bobtail has to pull out to let the other guy leave, and then he can go back in. And then he decides to leave. And then there's another truck that was by me on the right, and he decided he was going to try to pull around me to the right because he didn't know why I was stopping. He was going to try to pass me, and then he ended up barricading me in there, so the guy had short space because I didn't realize he was going to back up. He looked like he was pulling out. Ends up being that he wasn't happy with his angle, so he's pulling forward to set up again. I was like, great. So now I had to wait for this guy to back up with limited space. The 2 bobtails in his space backing up all over the place, and then me, in front, and I can't back up because the goof is back there behind me, and the truck that decided to barricade me in on the entrance to the fuel island. So he's stuck. Anyway, the guy was finally able to back in. He had a helper. I turn around the other side, turn around, come back left, and there's a guy trying to get into a tight spot, so I'm waiting there again. I'm like, great. So anyway, I get to that pod's location to pick up. Here's where I made my second mistake. I mentioned I made 2 mistakes. I'm supposed to be picking up 3 pods at this pod's location. They have 2 again. But there are 2 pods locations in Aurora, 1.2 miles from each other. To me, when I looked at them, I said, well, where's my other pod? And they said, oh, it's at the other Aurora location. 1.2 miles away. I'm like, oh, okay. Quickly go into the computer and tell them, hey, my other pod's at the other Aurora location. I'm going to go pick that up and then hit the road. Seemed logical to me. Apparently, though, that is not the procedure that Pods wants us to follow. Schneider didn't get back to me very quickly. I sent the message right as I was on my way to Aurora, the other Aurora location. I pulled up there. The guy unburied my pod. He gave it to me. I strapped up, loaded, got out of there. There was a little bit of rush hour. There was a car crash, and so it backed up traffic. And I got about 100 or so miles down the road, and I get a message that said, you are not to leave a pod's location if your pods are not there. To me, it seemed like common sense. This is already my load. And as a matter of fact, the paperwork I was given from the pod's location was just the containers. And then when I got to the other location, they had the right paperwork for their location going to where I'm going. So I looked at it and said to myself, what's the deal? I don't understand, because it basically, they were the first pod's location, those 2 pods, there was one going to Paris, California, and one going to Tolleson, Arizona. The other pod that I was picking up from the other location was also going to Arizona. So that means that when I go to offload in Tolleson, because I had to drop off 2 pods and pick up 1, or pick up 2, and Tolleson going to Paris, that means that basically the very front pod and the middle pod were going to be the 2 that had to be removed, because the last pod, I take that back, the last pod that I was picking up, the one at the other Aurora location, that was the third on the, so the truck is in the front, then you have 1 pod, 2 pod, 3 pods, and that one's the one that had to stay. So the other 2 had to go off in Tolleson, come on, 2 more, come on, and then I could head on. So that was the way it was. So I asked the guy who put the last pod on, I said, do me a favor, give me a couple inches. Just that way I can make sure that, and also when the guy loaded up, I said, give me a couple inches from the the headboard up at the front too. That way there's enough room. You never can tell who's going to be your forklift operator. And if the pods are slightly bigger or slightly smaller, I don't know, but I would rather have the room than have to unstrap everything and have them shift and everything. Anyway, so I hit the road and I'm start going south, headed towards Albuquerque at the time because I'm going to have to stop in Albuquerque for the night. And it ends up that after I get that message that says you were not to leave a pod's location because they may want you to pick up a different pod. And so they basically, the way that pods works is that I would basically just, have the driver wait. We'll figure it out. That I have a problem with. I know I'm on the clock, but I'm making at that point less than a McDonald's worker because it's only $10 an hour. Granted, I'm appreciative that it's anything, but still waiting for pods to just kind of, what do we want to do? Should we just send him 1.2 miles over there to pick up the other pod and then go? Or should we have him pick up something at the same location? To me, it's a no-brainer. Let me continue the work that I already got going, so I thought it was no big deal. Apparently, the procedure we're supposed to follow, and I know I sound like I'm complaining, is that if there's anything that deviates from the paperwork, you stop right there, inform the DTL team who will inform pods, and then pods will pick up figure out the decision. The previous time that something like this happened, I was forwarded the chain at the very, very end, the email chain. And apparently when Schneider sent them the message and said, we have to think about this and try to determine what we want to do, let's have the driver wait, if that's okay. And Schneider was like, yeah, sure, no problem. I understand. Again, I appreciate the fact that they're paying $10 an hour. It's not much. It doesn't pay the same thing as when you're driving. But worse than that, it slows you down. I don't like to be slowed down. I like to hustle. I like to get where I'm going. And sitting there just kind of like, okay, let's wait for pods to figure it out. To me, that when it seems like a no-brainer, that was when I got irritated. Because I'm like, okay, so that means that I'm getting scolded because I'm not following procedure. That's the second screw up I made. To me, it seemed like a no-brainer, but there's a protocol and a procedure we have to follow. Interestingly enough, and here's one of the problems I have. Schneider has told me multiple times, it's our policy that. This is our policy. This is the policy that. Not all of them are just pods related. Some of them are company policies. And I have asked for a policy manual, a policy book. Is there something on eDocs? Is there something you can email me? And every time I've asked either in the communication tool or via email, it has been unresponded to. So the way I look at it is if there's a procedure I'm supposed to follow, you got to tell me the procedure. Otherwise, I don't know to follow it. And scolding me, I don't care if you're saying you can't do this or whatever. Let's just say, okay, well, you shouldn't do this. Okay. I'll know for next time. I don't care. Scold me if that's what you feel like doing. But to me, you cannot tell me you must follow our procedures. Our procedure is this, and get annoyed at me over it when I don't know your procedures. Send me the playbook. Send me the manual. Send me something like that. That way I know them because I don't know the policies. So again, I have asked the company for a policy book, and guess what? They have not sent it to me as of now. And I've sent this multiple times and asked him multiple times in email and in the communication tabs, is there a way to look one up or something like that? It's ignored. I guess it's one of those things where they just want to be able to tell you what their policies are. Well, guess what? I have a policy too. If you want me to follow your policy, you got to tell me. That's my policy. Now, my policy is going to come back into play here and again in a moment because I was able to get from Denver out of the city. I was able to get almost 400 miles. And then I stopped at a casino, Black Mountain, it wasn't Black Mafia. What was it? Black Maria? Something like that. Casino and truck stop. and I was hoping they would find a parking spot. I would find a parking space there. It was so nicely laid out at that truck stop, just about 25 miles north of Albuquerque on 15 going south, 25 going south. So nice, because you basically pull all the way in and then you start going towards the front again, but then there's angled parking going off either side. So there's this little driveway in the middle that, and it's a big lot, but it's painted. So that way you basically go around and then you come back down and then there's angled parking. So it's so nicely laid out. You can easily drive down the road and then just pop right in there, just like you do at a rest area. And then when this side fills up, there's the other side. And there's a gap between the trucks. It's so nicely laid out. It's America's Best also. They have a trucking lounge and stuff. Really nice layout. Anyway, I met up with a friend of mine who came out and had dinner with me. Meeting up with a lot of friends. Kind of cool. And then the next morning I got up, drove through Albuquerque, got all the way to Tolston. I did my drop. They dropped off those 2 pods, and then I picked up, and then about 2 miles down the road there was a Pilot or a Flying J, one of the two. Pilot, Flying J. And I stopped there for the night. At this point I was starting to run low on fuel again. And so I went ahead and put about half a tank in. And that was actually accidental. I was going to go ahead and just fill it up. Because on one fuel assignment that I got, it had sent me to that truck stop. And I said, oh, okay. But then it removed it overnight. So that was the fuel stop it actually had for me. But when I got up that morning just north of Albuquerque, it said we have removed a fuel assignment from your active work assignment. I'm like, why did you remove it? I need to fuel there. Now, here's another interesting thing. As I was headed out of Denver and, going up and down and stuff like that, it's not a bad drive. The temperature started going, hotter and stuff. That's kind of cool. Because going south is fine in the colder months. But as I started going farther and farther south, there was a couple of times I had to stop. I got pulled over to a weigh station to get weighed. I had to pull over for a brake check and things like that. Not a big deal. But they removed my active work assignment shortly. And this is one thing that they did shortly after they scolded me and said, you're not to do this. They removed my active work assignment. I'm like, why did you remove? Maybe it's because I was thinking to myself, maybe it's because I didn't respond back quick enough and said, oh, sorry. Or, in the message, it's like, we have a procedure you're supposed to follow. And then all of a sudden the active work assignment went away. And I'm like, did you remove it from me? So I'm getting really, really frustrated. So I pull over to the next safe place to do so. And I check and I don't have an active work assignment at this point, but I check my email and it says revised trip sheet. I look at my paperwork and it's the exact same trip sheet number. It just actually has the exact same thing. The only thing they've added is that pod's location. Cool. So the second Aurora pod's location that was 1.2 miles away, they figured it out. Awesome. Now I'm hitting the road again. Now, I went down there, got through Albuquerque, got to Tolleson, dropped off, picked up, stopped overnight. And the fuel assignment, I said that it was an accident as to why I ended up with about half a tank, filling up only one of my tanks. And it's because you pull into some of these fuel islands and the pumps are even. Sometimes you pull up and they're not even. There's one pump over here, one pump over here. I pulled up what I believe is between the two of them. This one is very easy to get. The other side, though, it's about that far short. And I'm not about to sit there and try to spray for the hole with the fuel thing. So at this point, I try to stretch it over there and I'm like, I'll just hold it to try to fill this thing up. It won't get there. It's like that short. I'm like, fine. I'll just fill up the other side. I'll get a fuel assignment overnight and then I'll be on the road. Now, I was leaving. I got up at 11 p.m. I have the Wendy's app. So every time I shut down, I try to get a burger someplace, whether Hardee's or Burger King. Actually, I haven't gone to Burger King yet. Usually it's Wendy's. But I ended up on the app. I had 2 Baconzillas for the price of one. And I was like, can I get a pretzel Baconzilla and a regular one? And they're like, let's see. Puts it in the app and it comes up as like $10. I'm like, that's a great deal. 2 double patty bacon things. Now, I don't eat this much anymore. But who could turn down double baconzillas? I mean, that was, yeah, I was like, oh, I'm like so stuffed. So I got up in the morning and I was like sluggish because, you know, even going to bed that night, the night before, I was like, oh, I feel so full. You know, I couldn't tell if I was going to be sick. I couldn't tell if I had to, you know, if I was going to run to the restroom or whatever. I was just like, whatever. Just got to be aware of what's going on, I guess, with the vitals, because I'm not used to eating that much anymore. If you start at the beginning of this channel, you'll realize that I was a lot heavier then. I've lost like 50 pounds since I started this trucking adventure. Almost 6 months ago. Almost. Yeah, almost. I think it'll be as of shortly after Christmas, I would have been on this journey for about 6 months. Wait a minute. It was right after Memorial Day, so at the very end of May. So it has been 6 months. Almost 7 then. All right. So anyway, I set my alarm this morning early, got up really early, hit the road by 11:30 p.m., pass over into Pacific time, and I lose an hour. I have a couple of truck stops that I'm going to. So I get all the way to the pods location to drop off this morning because I went to the other one, and I'm dropping off all 3. And I get there early. I put all my straps away, and I'm outside the building, but you know, with everything unstrapped, because as soon as I open up the door, I just creep in there, 4 miles an hour. And if you're watching this, say that is unacceptable. You shouldn't drive with unstrapped loads. Here's the thing: there's a dirt lot here, and then you pull right in there, and then you just stay at 4 miles an hour, 5 miles an hour, whatever. You go slow. You make every turn very slow. You're fine. But as soon as they load you up, they say you can't strap down here. You got to pull out onto the road. So you pull out on the road, hang on the right-hand side. It's a big wide road, and trucks seldomly go down it. So you got to do it anyway because they won't let you strap up there. So you might as well offload. I unstrapped everything. Now I got a little frustrated this morning because I was the first person there. Well, actually, there was another guy there, but he was asleep in his truck, and he never once moved. So as soon as they opened up the door, I already had like 3 other pods trucks behind me. I start creeping in the gate, following the truck in, and when I get in there, there's 2 trucks already there because apparently they opened up the other door, which you're not really supposed to go in. You go out that door, but there was a couple of trucks that went ahead and pulled in and pulled around. So I got in there. One of the trucks that pulled in behind me, I was the first person to sign in on their sign-in sheet. But they did 2 other people. They served 2 other people before me. I was like, are you kidding me? I was here first, and I wanted to get out of there so desperately because here's the thing. I'm meeting up with another friend. And I have friends all over the Los Angeles area. But the friend that I'm going to be meeting up with lives east of Paris. So there's a truck stop over there. Now, I knew my hours were going to be getting low. I knew I was only going to have about 4 left. And so I asked, should I try to pick up something here at the same time? Or should, you know, while I'm at Paris, that way I can start heading back east. I was hoping to do that. That way I could stop at this truck stop and do my reset. But I was told you'll get better jobs if you have more hours. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll defer to your expertise in this. And I said, then don't put me on the list. Okay. So I dropped off, and then I started heading east. Now, when I had this conversation, I was told, but you can reset in San Bernardino at our drop lot there. There's like 3 drop lots near there. The thing is, though, from that pod's location, I'm looking at the traffic. I'm looking at my apps, and to get there, it's going to take about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. It was like fluctuating between 2 hours and 2 hours and 18 minutes, and that was on Waze. You know, it's not going to be that much different because it's basically interstate. And then the truck stop I want to go to that's nearer. It's still not all the way out to my friend, but it's at least closer. It's out of the area that pod's location is because they don't really have any truck stops anywhere near there. And there was only one Pilot Flying J that was anywhere closer. And but you look at it, their spaces are very, very tight. You basically pull out of the fuel island, you loop around, and that's right where everybody's trying to park. So everyone in the world is going to be jammed up. If you're trying to pull through the fuel island, you're going to be jammed up. It's not going to be fun. So I really didn't want to go there. So I just went down a few extra miles to the next one because I've been here before. This is Thousand Palms. Now, it's 63 miles away from the Paris hub. So I have a note here because I looked online. There were people saying when you reset, Schneider doesn't want you to go more than about 25 miles to shut down. Okay. Is it their policy? I still have not gotten a policy book. No one has told me anything of the sort. They won't send me a policy book. So I don't know what to expect. And some people online were saying, no, they'll dispatch you to where they want you to reset. That's not part of my trip sheet. My trip sheet has the location I'm picking up from, the first and the last place I'm dropping off at, and then it ends. So we're not allowed to park at the pod's locations, but they are not telling us where they want to shut down for the night. And they basically, when they assign us the next job, it's as if we've been there. So I am 63 miles away from that Paris location, but I'm now pre-assigned to pick up there and go to Atlanta when I'm done resetting. Actually, it says technically pick up tomorrow, but I'll be in the middle of my reset then, so I'm not going to do that. But the way I look at it is you have not sent me a policy book. You are not dispatching me, which means I would pay. Like, okay, I looked in those drop lots. There are no services. There's no food. There's no drink. There's no bathroom. There's no shower. And I'm supposed to stop and shut down there for 2 days because by the time I dropped off at 6 a.m. and by the time I got out of there, it was about 6:45. Let's just say that it took me until 2 hours and 15 minutes to get to San Bernardino before I shut down. If that's how long it took me to get there and there are no services and I'm not going to be picking up anything for 2 days, like 45 hours. Am I supposed to have no food, no drink, no shower, no bathroom? What am I supposed to do? Schneider is not paying me and dispatching me to a place to shut down. If they did, I would say, gotta do it. They basically say, we'll pay you until you get to the customer site and you drop your entire load, then we'll give you another job. Okay, that means it's my choice. If it is my choice, I'm going to go someplace that is not going to make me uncomfortable. So here I am at the Thousand Palms Flying J. I got here at what time did I get here? I got here about 8 a.m. I got here about 8 a.m. and it is now 3 p.m. It feels like I have been here forever because I have. I got up last night at 11 something p.m., which was like 10 something p.m., this time zone. And went ahead and drove out here. And so I've been up now for 18 hours? Yeah. Well, no. Something like that. Like 16, 15 hours, something like that. But I'm not doing anything tomorrow. So I got here, did my post-trip. I watched It's a Wonderful Life, because it is the season as of the time of this recording. And then I watched the end of the Squid Game challenge, and I watched behind the scenes, and I've watched some other things, and I've been here hanging out, just doing nothing except watching things and being bored. I've talked to my family a few times now that they're out of school on the East Coast, and I'm rendering a video for this channel back there right now. It's just, I mean, I know I sound kind of, like I'm bitter or whatever else. I still like Schneider. I still am very appreciative. I still like the Pods account a whole lot. So my frustrations and stuff, I'm sure people are watching this thing. That's what you're griping about? Well, that's nothing. You ought to try this company. This company was terrible. Or this was this. And I think they treat me very well. I like the fact that as long as I hustle and as long as because I'm a planner, I can plan and I can look at the weather and I can say, this is going to be a problem. This is not going to be a problem. Like, for example, I mentioned I've already been pre-assigned. So I am pre-assigned now to pick up in Paris technically tomorrow, but I'm not going to be reset. I'm going to set my ETA 6 a.m. on that Thursday, and I'm going to hit the road. I'm going to be at that pods location to pick up very first thing. I'll give them the trip sheet. I have 4 pods, 2 8s and 2 16-footers. So a total of 10 straps I'll be throwing. And then I have to get to Atlanta by Wednesday the following week. I think I'm going to be able to swing it and get there by Monday. That means once I pick up there in Paris, I have to get 400 miles down, and roughly, and there ends up being a pilot and a Flying J at one exit between Phoenix and Tucson. Now I have a choice. I can start going and wiggle up back roads and then go on I-40. Or I can go on I-10 and go south, barely missing the border down to El Paso, go through that area, go through the Dallas-Fort Worth area by jumping on and then jumping on I-20 and going through Dallas-Fort Worth and headed right to Atlanta. It's about 2,165 miles-ish is what it looks like. Now, if I go up 40, it's a little bit longer. But there's also a little bit of a winter advisory warning going through New Mexico. So the way I look at that is farther south, the better. There's no weather advisories going south. So since they're more or less the same, I'm going to go the southern route. Even though it's going to take me through Dallas-Fort Worth at a time that if I get delayed too much at the pod's location and I get out of there too late and I shut down, I'm going to already lose an hour because the jumping back to mountain time. I'm going to lose an hour, and then I'm going to have to shut down at that pilot or Flying J between Tucson and Phoenix. And that means that's only at about 380 miles. I'd like to get 400. The next day, I still haven't planned this far, but my goal is to make it about 625 miles, if not more. It's going to be tight, because anytime you go over about 625 miles, it's tight, but you go in the middle of the night, so it's not as bad. All right. So the next day, I am going to be going through Dallas-Fort Worth, and I'll lose another hour going back to Central Time. And if I hit Dallas-Fort Worth, anytime after about 5 a.m., I'm doomed. I'm going to be slowing down. So I really hope I can get my pods, get out of California in the speed limit 55 area, get past Phoenix, because when I drove through Phoenix, I basically came straight out of Albuquerque, went down to Phoenix, and it was just creeping along, all slow, because there was a car that had spun off and crashed, and it slowed everything down, and they had put up cones and everything, and while they were taking care of it, and it's like so slow. This is around lunchtime. And I'm hoping by the early afternoon, at the very latest, I'm able to get to the pilot and Flying J. That way I can shut down there. And if, let's say, it's 3 p.m., I can leave by 1 a.m. And hopefully get past El Paso and get my way. I'll probably get to El Paso just after rush hour. And then I'll shut down in Texas. And then if I can start around 11 p.m. that night, I will get through Dallas and Fort Worth. With losing another hour, I will get through Dallas and Fort Worth by about 4:30 a.m. Get to the other side of Dallas. I really want to. That's the game plan. Okay. I'll leave you with one other last note since I'm talking your ear off yet again. Signaling early is a good idea, not just for safety's sake, telling people what around you, what your plan is. But if you signal early, and if you signal and there's a car about halfway down your trailer, you'll put them to a decision. Do I want to accelerate and not let this semi in front of me? Or do I want to slow down and let the semi in front of me just because I don't know if he sees me or not? If you put on your signal, you force them into a decision. And it's their choice. I'm fine with either one. I'll tell you this, though. This is one of those jobs where I don't have road rage as a rule. I mean, not even as a rule. I don't have road rage. But I sure do talk while I'm driving down the road. I'll be saying, oh, come on, you idiot. You know, oh, why'd you slow down? Why'd you slow down and then whip in front of me? You're making me put on the brakes like crazy and we're going up a hill. I'll still complain. I do that even if I'm in my car. I've done that for years. This is one reason why I should not ever record myself, you know, on this channel while I'm driving down the road. Because if I do, just me being me and talking on the road, somebody will fly it past me and then slam on a brake because they'll see a police officer and I'll start laughing. I'll say, yes, are you going to get a ticket? Or do you think you're going to? Survey says, the police officer's pulling out. He's pulling up behind you and you're pulled over. Oh, well, enjoy those points. And I'm just, you know, talking to myself. But if I ever recorded myself and just me being me, if I ever released that, people would assume I was playing to the camera, I was doing some sort of interaction with the camera, and I'm not. So it's like, that's the last thing in the world I want to have people think that I'm doing is playing to the camera. I'm not. Either way, I don't care anything about seeing myself. I just like to see the road in front of me. That's what I concentrate on. I actually do record my drives. I've done that now for about 3 months. But it's just looking out the front window. Actually, for a while, I was using my Insta360X3 because that camera, in order to do a time-lapse mode, because that's all it is a time-lapse. I do 2 frames per second in a time-lapse, so it just flies really fast. There's no sound. But I don't care about seeing me. I just care about seeing the road and stuff like that. When you drive past things, you can always put it into 1/4 speed when you play back or whatever, even slower, and you can see everything. But I mean, when you drive past a lot of landmarks, and they slowly creep past anyway, you put it on time lapse and it goes much faster. Then you slow it down if you really want to look at things. But anyway, that's the notes I have on this one. That's the adventure I've been on. Started and ending in California, just different ends of it. I'm on the southern side right now, and I was on the northern side the last time you saw me. So there you go. That's the end of it. What I'm really hoping is that when I pick up, I'm going to put in I'm still planning my trip, looking at the truck stops I want to stop at. Because if I can, it's a 2165 route. I know I want to try to get to 400 miles down the first day. That's not including go to the Paris location. If I'm not able to, though, which it looks like I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to get about 380. I need to try to make it up. And then I also have 3 time zones I got to go back in time. Basically, I got to lose 3 hours. So the first day I will lose an hour when I shut down. Then I'll go and shut down in Texas, and I don't think I'm going to be in Central Time at that point. I think that the mid part of that day I'll hit Central Time the next day. I'll get through Dallas, Fort Worth, and then probably shut down somewhere in Mississippi. We'll see. And I don't know, maybe Louisiana. I don't remember. I haven't a trip planned that far yet. But if I can get 400 miles that first day, which would be about 380, and then if I can get 625-ish the next 2 days, that would get me about 1250. With the 400, that will get me 1750. That means that I will only have about 500 to do, plus or minus, a little bit over, to drop off at the pods at that location and then to park at the Schneider OC on Monday. So that means I would leave Paris on Friday, hopefully shut down that night, and then I'll drive Saturday and Sunday, and then hopefully I'll be able to drive in early morning hours and then drop off my pods before they close. Hopefully it'll be right after lunchtime, because if I can start pulling my hours back, because you know, if I shut down, let's say 3 o'clock, I can leave by 1, and then I'll be done by, let's say, you know, even if it's 1 again, I can leave at 11. And then if I shut down again, I can leave at 9. So driving overnight. The thing is, though, I'm going to be losing 3 hours in the time change. That pushes me from 9 back to midnight again. So anyway, I got to finish planning the trip out. All right. That's it. Thanks for watching.